Hello, my name is Asya Darbinian, and I'm the Executive Director of Chhange, Center for Holocaust, Human Rights, and Genocide Education, housed at Brookdale Community College in Lincroft, New Jersey, on the territory of Lenni Lenape people. Welcome to our virtual Kwipuka 30 program. As you know, April is the Genocide Awareness Month, and we begin this month with a reflection on the 1994 genocide against Tutsi in Rwanda. Each year, from 7th of April to 4th of July, Rwandans across the globe mourn the loss of over 1 million lives taken from us within those 100 days in 1994. This year marks 30 years since the genocide against Tutsi in Rwanda. Thank you for joining us this evening as we honor the victims and survivors of this genocide and hear from a survivor speaker, Henriette Mutegwaraba. First, a couple of quick housekeeping items regarding tonight's program. You will see that your audio is muted, and it will remain muted throughout the program. The chat box is enabled. Feel free to communicate with each other via chat box. Please make sure to send the questions for our speaker directly to me and not to the general chat box. That way I will be able to see all of your questions, and then at the end of the presentation, I will pose those questions to our special guest. And before we begin, I would like to thank Chhange's staff, Rachel McCauley and Suzanne Esterman, for running tonight's program via Zoom together with me. An extra warm thank you to our donors, supporters, and members. Today, we are fortunate to have Henriette Mutegwaraba with us. Henriette lived through the harrowing lead-up to and the inconceivable execution and aftermath of the 1994 genocide against the Rwandan nation's Tutsi people. Henriette serves as a board member for One Tribe, a nonprofit peace-building organization serving in East and Central Africa. She authored the memoir, By Any Means Necessary, Healing and Forgiveness After Genocide. As founder and executive director of the Million Lives Genocide Relief Fund, she is an ardent advocate for truth-based justice, PTSD awareness, and community restoration. Henriette enjoys speaking to colleges, church groups, and human rights organizations about attitudes and actions that prevent mass atrocities, consequences of human prejudice, and the healing potential of intentional unity. Today, Henriette will discuss genocide's effects and explore how survivors show incredible resilience, rebuilding their lives through community, faith, and inner strength. Henriette has kindly shared with us a brief video clip, which we will view together shortly. And after that clip, she will proceed with her talk titled Reflecting on Resilience, Commemorating 30 Years Since the Genocide Against the Tutsi. I will mute myself now, and we will proceed to the video.
My name is Henriette Mutegwaraba, and I'm from Rwanda. Rwanda is a very small country in Central West Africa with a population of 13 millions. A very beautiful country with a lot of hills. As a matter of fact, our country is called a land of 1,000 hills. I grew up in a very large family with 5 siblings, a lot of cousins, a lot of aunties, a lot of friends who remains in our family for years, to the point that you don't even call them friends anymore. And I don't know if it's something about the Rwandan culture. When you have people who are friends of yours for so many years, you start calling them cousins. So it was a huge family. There was always a party at my house Saturday, and my mom would just cook for everybody. It was such a joy. In our country, we have 3 tribes. We have the Hutu, we have the Tutsi, and we have the Twa. Many years ago, in 1932, I would just say, a racial identity was introduced in our country, where everybody had identity that is showing which race you belong to, which tribe you belong to. Our history goes way back, where our tribe was discriminated and oppressed for so many years. I remember the very first time when I went home with a lot of questions, because at a school, our teacher made us stand up, Hutu people, kids on one side, and the Tutsi kids on one side. And I didn't know what size I was going to go in, but the teacher knew my family very well. So when I ended up to the side of Hutu people, she corrected them. She said, "No, you're not a Hutu, you're Tutsi." So when I went home, I started asking those questions. What is the difference between a Hutu and Tutsi? They have already drawn this picture of how a Tutsi should look like. It's a tall person with a long nose. The government will say, we don't look like them. We don't look like other African, the Rwandese people in our country. We're taller, we have a smaller nose, so we must be from a different part of the world. So sometimes I will hear my grandma dropping comments of how tall the kids were, and that will scare her to death. And you can tell in her face, another tall one is being born, another skinny one is being born. So it means that we're not safe. The very first time when I was like 17 years old, I was in a classroom with a lot of, other kids. Of course, I was sitting in the back because I was tall. I was surprised with 2 policemen in the classroom. They asked the teacher if I can, follow them. So as a young girl, there I was following 2 men with big guns, and I was questioned about my family. I was falsely accused of being a spy for the Tutsis who lived outside the country. I was intimidated, I was scared, I was crying. I wasn't sure if I was going to come back. But then after hundreds and hundreds of questions, they sent me back to school. And I remember when I entered the classroom, and everybody started chanting that I was a snake, that I was a cockroach, because they didn't see us as human beings. We were cockroaches or snake, anything than human being. And the Hutu kids actually went to the headmaster's office and said that they cannot be in the school with us. So they started sending us a lot of kids home, Tutsi kids home. You cannot attend school here, you cannot attend school here. But I didn't go home that time because it was not safe. I went to my auntie's house because my aunt was married a Hutu man. So having a Hutu man in the family, it was a protection. And when I went to my auntie's home, who was married a very radical Hutu man, all the meetings were happening in the house of how the planning of genocide. As a girl in our culture, when you're in a house, you are the one. The housekeeper can make the food, but you're the one to take it to those people. You're the one to serve them. Knowing what they're talking about, knowing what they're planning, but also I have to be the one to bring them a cup of tea or a meal. And this man who used to come to the meetings, he stopped me at the bus stop and he told me he's gonna kill me. When we started to kill people, you are my first target. I went home, I get home really late. And I told my aunt, and she looked at me, she said, I don't think there is a safe place for us anymore in this country. Yeah, there wasn't. I was far away from my family. Most of the time, I was thinking about what was happening to me, but also I was worried about my family. Because I wasn't sure if the same thing I was going through, if they were going through the same thing at the same time. There was no way to communicate with them or to talk about those things. At that time, actually, they published a lot of newspapers with the cartoons showing that Tutsi people are the enemy of the country, they are cockroaches, they are snakes. There were radio, television, recording. They published the 10 Commandments, Hutu 10 Commandments in their newspapers, which means Tutsi cannot do this, Tutsis are not allowed to go to school, you cannot marry a Tutsi woman, Tutsis are not good in business, and it was intense propaganda, an intense propaganda behind this genocide. Our homes were being searched. Wake up in the morning, there's officials in front of your house searching for guns that they never found, accusing you of stuff that you have never done. April 1994, when it was now official, and on the radio and TVs, they called every Hutu person in the country and tell them to grab machetes, any traditional weapons, and go to the Tutsis family. They told them that they wanted to make sure that there was no a survivor of the killings. Nobody was supposed to survive. They killed the children, they raped women, they destroyed our homes, they killed our animals. Every single thing was gone. The genocide lasts for 100 days, and in those 100 days, 1 million of people were killed.
Good afternoon. It is good to be together on this day of commemoration. And it is good to be together for this time of remembrance. And it is very good we have at this time, this opportunity to remember, because as we collectively remember the past and the stories that make up our history,
Henriette, it's okay. Take your time. It's an emotional moment, and we are here with you in solidarity.
I'm sorry.
You don't have to be sorry at all.
Yes, it is. It's very good. This opportunity is very important because as we collectively remember the past and the stories that make up our history, we can lament, grieve what has been lost. We can learn from the perspective of what it is now clear to us in hindsight. We can celebrate ways we have not only survived, but despite extraordinary odds, the way we are thriving. And this is not easy because our stories are deeply painful. And the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi both devastated the lives we once knew and complicated the path we would have to forge and follow. But perhaps most importantly, this time of commemoration and reflection will help each of us to depart here with a great hope for what is for the future. By the grace of God, may we experience some sense of being encouraged by Him and by one another. And as we later conclude this time together, may we depart with even great hope from what may lie ahead of us. I'm sorry again. 30 years ago, history was repeated when 1 million of Tutsi people were murdered in less than 100 days. There have been other genocides throughout history, and genocide and its companion democide, which is the killing of people by their own government, exists till today. And while all genocides, all killing and destruction of people based on their race, religion, ethnicity, or nationality is a massive evil, this genocide 30 years ago was also personal, wasn't it? It was personal because in April 1994, our country became forever different as the world stood by, watching our mothers and fathers and cousins being killed. And it's tough, even after 30 years. Hindsight always brings clarity. We understand the past often more clearly than we see the present or the future. Sometimes we find ourselves understanding what we wish was true. We want to believe that our governments and associates institutions are working for our goods, for the goods of our nations. We want to believe that national and global leaders are coming to promote unity and well-being between nation states and their population. We long to trust that those who maintain highest position of leaderships will do all that in their power to promote peaceful coexistence between people. Then conflict rises. Those men and women will work with the whole of their strength to encourage the reconciling solution that lead up to doable peace. And such a peace is essential to sustainable and thriving societies. What we do not want to believe, and that's the case of Rwanda, is that sometimes our governments and institutions are corrupted at the highest levels. And those leaders are often guided by unseen, unelected power and dark money with no benign objectives. So our governments and institutional leaders will essentially shake hands with the devil, that we abandon their responsibilities to protect and defend human rights, security, and dignity of their people. Instead, that we abuse their power and help sponsor and perpetrate atrocities against the very people in population they are obligated to protect. And this is exactly what happened to our country in 1994. We do not want to believe this, and yet it can be true. At the highest levels, world leaders failed Rwanda in 1994. Our former government failed us big time. Those national and international heads of state and institutions ignored national and international law. They disregard human rights convention, including the 1948 Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. They colluded in their non-response and watched as a million of Tutsi sons and daughters, mothers and fathers and husbands and wives and children and teachers and pastors and doctors and being systematically extinguished. And they cannot tell me that they did not know. When there were advocates who tried to interrupt atrocities, those who knew exactly what was happening in our country and they cared, there were urgently blowing the whistle and setting of alarms that were silenced and ignored. That were silenced and ignored, and no help came to us. As the Tutsi women were brutally raped and churches filled with the Tutsi people burned to ashes, and Tutsi blood and bones cried out from the streets of Kigali and beyond, there was only an international silence. And as I'm speaking now, we have a lot of hundreds of children born of rape in our country. But within Rwanda was the perverse and the deceptive propaganda, and behind all of that was our government, dividing civilians by tribe, encouraging Hutu people to turn against their fellow human Tutsis because of their ethnicity differences, because of their tribe affiliation. That April 1994, so many Hutu people lost what it means to be human, as if bewitched by dark spirit, propelled by government lies and deception. So many forget what it means to be created in the image of God. Instead of remembering the dignity and the value of every human life, instead of recalling that God is the author of our differences, and such differences can unite rather than divide us. So many succumb to machetes and kill their neighbors, the people they went to the same church, the people they grow up together. For 100 days, think about it, just over 3 months. But those days and weeks and months seemed like decades and centuries, while the Tutsi families were in a complete shock, suffering in a terror. They did not know when the genocide was, of the violence would come. We did not know if it would come. We were just trying to stay alive and keep our loved ones' lives. But as we know, the end did indeed come, at least an end to the mass killings. But the tragedy was just beginning. It continues still 30 years later. Though as time passes and the grace of God continue, it is healing power in our lives, in our communities. Our wounds are becoming less polarizing. Our journey grown somehow brighter. But all of us here watching understand that the end to the genocide, the 1994 genocide against Tutsi, left us with the haunting questions of which we could never find answers. It means nightmares, nights and nights of nightmares and pain and memories we hope would end, but they did not end. They did not end because we could not stop loving and missing who and what we have lost. We loved our mothers, our fathers, our grandparents, our children. We loved our land of thousand hills, our coffee farmers high above sea level, our friends, the people we grow up with, our teachers. All together, we loved our community and the people and the place that help us grow, that made us feel strong and secure. And because we loved our people and our home, because we remember the breathtaking evil and the awful of genocide that took our lives, their lives, and changed ours forever, we cannot forget. We cannot forget our fathers who was not there to walk us down the aisle and give us away in a marriage. And for all of you who have been married and know such a joy and how it feels, but we never have that experience. A friend of mine who was a survivor of genocide, her name is Rhea. She was very successful. She went to school, she graduated. And one time I had a conversation with her, that time she was 24, and she looked at my eyes and she said, she doesn't want to be married. And I asked her, Leah, why don't you want to be married? You are so beautiful. You are so educated. You have everything. And she said, she looked at me, she said, there's nobody to share this joy with. My father is not there. My mother is not there. All my siblings have passed. So this is exactly what happened when you lose everything and people that you love. We cannot forget on the day of our university graduations or our missing parents amidst the sea of smiling mothers and fathers and siblings gathered to celebrate the accomplishment of their children. Or the Christmas gatherings that comes every year and remind us of times past when everyone was together and now we are so much fewer. Just 2 years ago, I'm sorry guys, I don't know, I'm so emotional today.
You know, seeing you so emotional, our audience was responding to it. They just cannot talk directly to you, but they were asking me to let you know that we wish we were with you in person right there to give you a hug.
Oh,
and
so
we are so grateful for
Thank you
your
so much.
courage to be here today and to share with us your thoughts.
Thank you.
So please don't apologize.
So just 2 years ago, my daughter, my only child, got married. It was the happiest day of my life. And I found myself searching the crowd wedding chapel for a glimpse of my father's face, my mother's smile. Even after all those years, I imagined exactly where they would be seated. I tried tracing the lines of their faces from memory. They should have been there. My four siblings should have been there too. Those were my family, the beloved people who made me a daughter and a sister, and they should have been there to see me as a grateful mother celebrating the marriage of her daughter and their granddaughter, their niece. For me, this is a part of what it has meant to have survived the genocide against the Tutsi. And each of you here have your own story of what survival has meant and what it has looked like. And we are all different, and we experience such loss and suffering differently. Excuse me. Some of you were victim of rape. And I know a lot of victims of rape who are now my friends and some family members. And some of them were left with HIV positive. One of my dear friends who was such a victim explained to me that each time, which is every day, she takes her HIV medication, she's reminded of the Hutu rapist who became less than human when he was raping her. Others of you have struggled hard with hidden wounds of trauma. So many in our country, homeland, now still suffering with a post-traumatic stress disorder, have found it is difficult, even impossible to care for themselves and their families. And as I'm speaking now, we have hundreds and hundreds of survivors in our country who have never been in a room with a therapist or a psychologist because it's not available for them. They just keep suffering and they keep passing on that trauma to the next generation. And this has been true of some here who came to the US seeking for a better life. A sense of feeling alone and hopeless, of feeling so tired, unable to make progress. Those emotions can fill our days, overwhelms us at a time. But just as there is darkness, I have learned there is a light too. Just as there is suffering, there is a path toward healing. So too, is there another side to what it has meant to survive the very worst of human imaginings and becoming whole again? For me, this has meant years, then decades of trying to piece together what happened, what went so hideously wrong, and how is it that human might plan and orchestrate such evil and hatred against each other? My efforts to understand helped me arrive at the truth I wish wasn't true. I became to realize and grapple with a level of evil I wish did not exist. But more than anything, surviving and my imperfect journey toward healing has entailed a relationship with God. Excuse me. Through those long and painful years, God has shown me the power of his life working through mine. Through him, I can grieve. I can lament the deep path of loss I have known. And this is important. I can take my pain to him and know that I'm loved by him. I can tell that he sees my suffering. He cares more than anyone. He despises evil and anguish that I and my people have endured. But I can also release evil that I have known. The breathtaking anger and sickness and agony that I have felt when I recall the murders of my family and destruction of my homeland. Please understand, I'm not saying forgiveness. I can forgive, but understand that I'm not saying that forgiveness means that wrong or you and other people who have suffered, that has not occurred. And that would be wrong. That would not be the truth. Forgiveness does not mean that evil done against me, my family, my homeland was acceptable. That would not be true. But when I forgive, I am in faith practicing the way of God, who canceled all my sin on the cross, forgiving me and no longer holding me wrong against me because I place my faith in him. When I forgive as he does, comment, I willingly cancel and strike away debt that is owed and declare it is finished. In forgiving, I release those who have harmed me back. And forgiveness is very important because when you don't forgive, you live with that poisoning life. And it does affect you only, it doesn't affect the people who offended you. As I release those who have harmed me back to God, knowing he sees and knows all things. In so doing, I set free those who have harmed me from any hatred and anger I might have been holding. But here's something powerful and beautiful. I have found that as I do this, as I forgive, God gives me the ability to love, to live a new life, a new freedom. This has not been easy but he uses my choice to forgive to make a space inside me, to love more deeply, to care more free about what is important to him. But before I finish my talk, I wanted to share this thought as I'm closing. I hope you will hear my word as a loving warning. Our nation here in the US and these people seems to become more divided by day. And I believe this is being accomplished by a massive onslaught of propaganda, separating people by parties, by ethnicity, by ideologies. As the Rwandese who have witnessed the lead up to the mass atrocities, we know such signs and we know their dark outcome. Those backing such deception and division have agenda of their own, and they are not noble agendas. Please hear me. I do love this country, and I love our people here in the US. We are privileged in this country, all of us, and we must strongly protect the freedoms and the rights that God has given us. We must not fall asleep with our eyes wide open and think that America is immune to what happened to our country or other countries that are suffering now, facing mass atrocities. Now it's time to remember and practice and remind our others of understanding that all people bear the image of God. Because of this, every person is worthy of dignity and respect. We need to not agree to be kind and agreeable with one another. We must so be wise as a serpent and innocent as dove. We must not get our perspective of each other from what is open propaganda, and we must pray and ask God to show us his truth, which is always right. So in closing, I want us to remember together the extraordinary ways in which we have moved forward, survivors of genocide, as individuals, as a family, and as a community. When I say move forward, understand I'm not dismissing that we have suffered. I'm not forgetting the immeasurable impact this genocide had on us all. Rather, I am saying that despite devastating odds, we have not given up. We have carried on and chosen to do the hard and painful work of building new lives. We have continued trusting God, turning to him and toward each other. In the face of your own grief, some of survivors here watching and loss, some of you have raised your younger siblings and you have raised them very well. After genocide, a lot of children who were actually aged from 13, they were raising their siblings because everybody was killed in their families. So I know some of those families who have done an amazing job raising children while they were still children as well. And many of you have attended and graduated from universities. You have become vocational leaders and you brilliantly serve your community in important capacities. You have become mothers and fathers, and you are a wonderful parents raising good and strong families. And I encourage you to keep doing what you're doing. Day by day, week, then months, then years by year, we have all continued living our lives, remembering our past while thriving for and believe in a more hopeful future. With God's help, we have done this with determination and the strength of friendship and community. We have moved forward. And while we are not the Rwandese who might have never been a genocide 30 years ago, we are there together today. We are strong and resilient. We are caring and committed and resentful. We have endured the darkest of human experience, and by the grace of God, not only survived, but have become men and women who have prevailed. In remembering this together, I pray we are all deeply encouraged and strengthened. And I wanted to thank the team that put it together this evening from Chhange. I deeply appreciate what you do to give us a voice and a platform where we can share our stories and educate. Thank you so much for everybody who is here. Thank you. I really thank you.
Thank you, Henriette. You have no idea how much love you are getting right now from all the participants that are here. And
Thank you.
we are actually going to forward you the support that you have been receiving throughout the talk, because we were getting it through chat, and we would just love you to see it.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes,
we are grateful for your grace, for your courage to join us this evening and to talk about such a difficult, painful, yet such an important topic.
Thank you.
And that's why we wanted to start this month with you, because you, with your life, have shown actually what you were talking about, how going through such horrible experiences, through that loss and trauma, you have found the strength to become such an amazing individual, such a beautiful person, and you keep giving. You keep thinking about others.
Thank you.
That is wonderful. That's admirable.
Nice.
If
Can I take 1 second, please?
Of course.
Okay, thank you.
That's while Henriette is taking a brief break. I'm gonna remind our audience that you can use the chat box to share your questions with me. We have already a couple of those, so thank you. But please keep sending those questions so that we can use this precious time with Henriette, and I will post those questions for her.
I'm sorry.
No worries. How are you feeling?
I feel great. Thank you, guys. You're amazing. Thank you for your support.
Thank you. And do you mind if we
questions? Yeah.
Questions?
Okay. Yes, thank you. Yeah.
There are a number of questions, but I want to start with asking you something about your memoir, because the video that you shared with us. So getting back to the memoir, because in the video that you kindly shared with us at the beginning, it's sort of based on your memoir and your story. And I would like you to share a little bit more about your experience, but most importantly, it was published very recently, right? In 2021, I believe.
Yes.
So what prompted you to publish it, to write it in 2021? Was there a specific reason for that? I have a feeling there was.
Well, I always was writing, but I wasn't writing on the paper. I was writing in my mind. And I was, the time where I was like, should I really write it? It was so painful. And sometimes you don't want to visit those memories. So I was scared, I was in a place where I wasn't ready. I knew that I needed to be there. I wasn't ready emotionally to go in those deep memories and write things, especially things about my family who are no longer there. And then one time I realized that my parents, both of my parents were survivors of 59 genocide. My grandpa was killed in 59, and my father was raised without a father because of that. And I remember just after genocide, having a lot of questions and just understanding the pain they went through. But there was no any documents, anything that can tell me exactly what the life they have lived and how they end up. How was life growing up? What was it? What was that time when they were being killed or forced to leave the country? And I had a lot of questions of my own, and I have some of the guilt that I would tell myself that my parents suffered a lot. And I don't remember even giving them a hug and saying that, Father, you really, you went through this. Now I'm living it. So, and a lot of questions. And I was like, so I have a daughter and I have a niece and nephew. And I say, I need to write down what we went through so that they will never have the question growing up about our family or what happened. And some stories that you can tell them, but it's in that book, they can read it. But also I wanted to raise awareness that this genocide happened. This genocide killed 1 million people. When you publish a book, it reaches to so many people, more than you can just go to conferences and talk. And that was pretty much about it. And I just started writing, and the book is there, and hopefully a lot of people can get to read it.
It's an absolutely captivating memoir, and I hope that more and more people get a chance to read, to be familiar more with your story, but also to learn and try to understand some of the important topics you bring up there. Several of those you mentioned in your talk, but there is so much more to learn from your experiences there. We have a question about gacaca courts.
Yes.
Since you talked about forgetting and forgiveness, what do you think about gacaca? Do you think it might bring reconciliation? What are your thoughts?
Let me can shed light a little bit. Well, I probably did not talk about forgetting. We cannot forget for sure. Forgiving. Gacaca was a good way for us to, on the side of survivors, even to get that closure, because a lot of our families were killed during genocide, and only the killers knew where the remains were. So the gacaca helps the closure of knowing at least where those remains will. It was through gacaca that we were able to discover the bodies of my families and all of the people who were killed, the neighbors as well. But also through gacaca, a lot of people, it's good to even to know who killed your beloved one. It was a way of the government, and that's what was known from many years in our culture. When people wrong to one another, they will meet in front of the house, and we have the elderly, the people that were trusted in the community, and we have to talk the problems, and then there will be somebody who can say, okay, forgive one another. I think gacaca helped a lot because the international court in Arusha was not really moving so fast enough. So it helped us to know who did what, when, what the why. We never figured out the why they did, but it helped a lot in reconciliation.
Thank you. Another question about your experience, thinking about following up with the idea of reconciliation and dealing with the past. I know that you worked at the Kigali Genocide Memorial Center.
Mm-hmm.
And I happen to know that you are most proud of the work that you did there. Would you please share with us what that experience was like and why it was so significant for you?
After genocide, well, we all know that it took forever for the UN to admit that it was a genocide. And the very first time we opened memorial center in our country, the very first one, I have been participating in exhuming the remains because as a survivor, and that time I was in my 20s, my young sister was very young. So I would volunteer to go to the neighborhood and exhume the remains. And then when they opened the very first Genocide Memorial Center, I couldn't wait to go there, to work there, to help. It was a very challenging job. This is a place where we had 500,000 survivors of genocide buried. My uncle was buried there. And a lot of survivors would come to visit put the flowers or visit the loved one, the graves. And that time, it really helped me because I had to learn that there are other people who went through a lot. And there is so much power in serving others. By the time I was helping others, trying to figure out what was going on, try to be there for them, especially for those who were traumatized. That was the very first time I've seen anybody who was suffering post-traumatic stress disorder and flashback that comes with it when their mind goes back to what they've seen and they start running the center. So I was among those people who would just run behind them and catch them and put them in my chest and learn how to talk to them. I have never been to a counselor myself, but we had to figure out how we can counsel those people, we can help them. And the most challenging thing was to see more than 100 people being traumatized at the same time. And there was no hospital in the country. There was no center. There was nowhere to take them. So you would just take them to the hospital. People didn't know what they were suffering. Even themselves didn't know what was suffering. It took us time to know exactly that was because of genocide. And they have this injection, they used to inject them. They will sleep for a few hours and get back, go home with their trauma. No follow-up, nothing. So a lot of friends some that I know, they started to have seizures. It was the effect of the medicine and all of that. So, but also it was, of course, it made me feel empowered to be able to do something for the community like that, to help them. And also to educate other visitors who are coming from outside to come and learn exactly what happened to us. And the center is still there now. I was there for 4 years and they're doing amazing.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Again, something that you mentioned, the trauma afterwards. One of our attendees is writing, one of the biggest challenges that the survivor community is facing now is how to mitigate the intergenerational transmission of trauma from survivors who have had little or no mental health services to their children. We have children of survivors who are now having nightmares of being chased by machete-bearing killers when these children did not experience the genocide. Mm-hmm. And our attendees mentioning the conference that you are organizing in August to challenge this, to face these challenges together, and asking if you could talk a little bit more about it, and so that our audience is aware of what you're doing.
Ever since after genocide, I feel that I'm called to care about those who suffer post-traumatic stress disorder, because it's an invisible wound that most of the time is overlooked. And we see it in our families, we see it in our friends, and sometimes we don't know what to do. But also, like the person who asked the questions, it's being transmitted. In a country where we have 13 million, and we only have 9 psychiatrists. So every million people in our country has 1 psychiatrist. There is no such a thing. It's just, you cannot, it's just beyond. So this August 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, I realized that it's needed for our families to get together and our children and talk about this issue of mental health. Without a training without a knowledge of what we're suffering, without of course we can have some experts coming to join us, to guide us, to shed the light of some stuff we probably don't see. But it's very important, it's very needed that we know what we're suffering and we know what our children are suffering. It's very important that we equip them with the knowledge we have, like we were talking before about these human rights issues, because they're going to be the voice when we're gone. So we're going to be focusing, we have like speakers who are really knowledgeable about those topics, intergenerational trauma, mass atrocities, and all of that. But this time around, we're in a room with our children. It's a safe place for them so that we can talk. Maybe they have a questions they wanted to ask us that they have never asked it before. I am looking forward. This is the very first time we're having this conference, the Voice of Resilience, that I'm putting together. So even myself, I have a dream, but I don't know the outcome but I think it's going to be a great outcome.
Yeah, sounds great. And I'm glad that we can also be a platform to share that information and help you to publicize the information about the conference, because it is really an important attempt to get together survivors and to have these discussions that might not have any other chance to do.
Thank you.
We also have a question from a community member who is writing, who first of all, they're thanking you for sharing your experience, and they say that their mother's family members were genocide victims and were killed in the Nazi Holocaust against Jewish people. Wow. Genocide is a very unfortunate part of human history. What do you think regular people around the world could do to help? And they also have a follow-up question, which is more, I guess, history-related question, which is how the genocide against Tutsi in Rwanda stopped after 100 days. Mm-hmm. And what was the turning point that made that possible?
So was the question how regular people can help to prevent genocide or help after genocide?
It was not specified there, but since the follow-up.
So let me think that how genocide. Can we help? How can we help to prevent genocide? Maybe that's, but if not, we can, the person else, they can ask again. Sure. It's very important that we educate ourselves and we educate our families. I think a lot of damage are done at the young age. A lot of damage to our young generation are done in our homes, on our dining tables where nobody's around, when we feel free to say that this person doesn't look like you because you know that nobody's there listening. When we feel it is okay to tell our 12 years old that your neighbor is this race, maybe your neighbor is Jew, maybe your neighbor is a Tutsi. So that's when the damage, most of them, our society damage, the fabric get damaged at a young age. So we need to raise families. We need parents who can teach their children about love and to separate from evil. From really little age. You don't have to be feeding in the side that is talking or teaching what is wrong. So we need to raise strong children, teaching them how to love their neighbors, no matter how they look, where they come from, backgrounds. Just start at the young age. If every family in the world can start the teaching in their homes, dining table, the world will be different. We will say bye to genocide.
That is a wonderful response. You know, I had a quote from you that I wanted to share with our audience, and I think this would be the perfect place for it. You write, where people can be taught to hate, they can be taught to love.
To love, yes.
Where they can learn to hurt, they can learn to forgive. Even as it turns out, me. Mm-hmm. When you were talking about your own experience of first thinking that you were going to always hate and not be able to forgive, and then how you found the strength to eventually do that.
Thank you.
I also would like to, we have a couple more minutes, ask you about something.
There was another question. I'm not trying to. There was another. The first one I asked. There was another question.
Oh, yes, of course. You are so good. How did you remember that? The follow-up was about when
how genocide ended.
Stopped. What was that turning point that it stopped at 100 days?
Oh, okay. So yeah, that's there we have a group of Tutsis that, like I said, I was sharing you that my grandparents were killed in 59. So ever since from different times, from 59, a lot of Tutsis were forced to leave the country. The government were forcing them to leave the country. And we had a large number of Tutsi people who lived outside the country. And they formed what they called RPF. And when we cried for other nations to come and stop genocide, nobody came to help us. But that is the group who came to Rwanda in 1994 and fight the former government and stop genocide. And that's how genocide ended. I think when you can probably read the book, my memoir, you can find, well, you can read in a deeper what happened, how genocide ended.
Yeah, you do a wonderful job of very concisely explaining it. And there was also a follow-up question of how did you survive this incredible, unimaginable violence? Some of our audience members are not familiar with your story of escape. If you would like to share that story, I think it's another incredible one.
I started to suffer really many years before the genocide because of my height. I'm tall. I'm 6'1.5", and that's exactly what a Tutsi, and that's the picture of a Tutsi in our country. I mean, we started to suffer when we were little, but when I was in a boarding school around 92, I was one of the students who were accused to poison the Hutus. They would come up with some false accusation. So they accused me that that's when I shared in a video where I was arrested. They come in a classroom, they took me, and I was accused of having a poison to poison Hutu children in a school. It was very terrifying. The school want to keep me there. You know, it's a long story to cut the story short. So I wanted to have to live with my aunt who was married to Hutu, went to a private school. But even when I was in a private school, it was always that we roadblocks everywhere. And I would go to school and other children would get home, other kids would get home like probably 2 hours before me. And my aunt was always worried, what happened to you? It was because most of the time they would stop me at the roadblocks. They would stop me at the roadblocks and then they would let other Hutu kids leave. So I went home and I talked to my aunts, went to my family, but also it was so much going on. It's probably read the book, but I end up leaving the country before my family was killed. I made it to Burundi. It was me and my cousin who was pretty much the same age, but there was a conversation. My mom put me aside and she looked in the face. My mom who have experienced another mass killing of Tutsi, and she looked at my face to say, I know what happened in this country when there is a war. She was worried about me. And she said, I don't want to watch you being raped. And I don't want to watch you being starved, because she had experienced the starvation that happened during the war. And she used this example, and I'm sorry, she said, if you stay with me, I'm gonna watch your breast disappearing in your chest because you're gonna be starving. So that's how the whole, that's how it started. And I look at her face, I say, Mother, I wanted to die before you die because I loved my mom so much. I could never imagine with life without her. So she looked at me in the face, she said, You're being so selfish. You're still young. I said, No, I don't want, I wanted to be killed first because I know that we're going to kill her at some time. And it was just like, as if we have this, like negotiation. I look at us, I wanted to be died first. So that's when we planned the whole thing. And then I left the country, went to Burundi, which was a wrong journey. Please get the book. Or send me your address, I send you a copy. That's it. But anyway, that's how I survived. I left, I went to Burundi and then neighboring country. And then, after a short time I was there, they killed all my family, except my young sister who survived. But it's another journey of how, the roadblocks, how we get stopped. We don't want it to go there. It's 30 years, but it's still painful.
And since we have your wonderful sister, Chantal, here with us, would you mind sharing what made you return to Rwanda when you had decided not to ever be back?
Yes, my uncle who was in Burundi, he left Rwanda in 59 as well, or maybe his parents did. He's the one who knew that my whole family was killed. And I told myself that I would never go back to Rwanda. There was nothing to go for. My family was killed. Our 2 homes were destroyed. Our animals, cows, dogs, everything was gone. And I decided to remain the refugee because there was no reason. And that time, a lot of people from Burundi, these people will go to Rwanda, go to some homes. A lot of Hutus have left the country. They will go there and get the TVs for free, or go to the homes people were killed. So other country, the neighboring country, it was amazed. They would go to Rwanda and take staffs in people's home who were killed, or people who just left the country. So one of my cousins actually had to go back. She decided to go back to Rwanda, Francoise, and I said, I'm not gonna go. You can't go to Rwanda, but I will never go back. So when she went to Rwanda, she knew that my sister was still alive, that my sister survived, and my aunt survived. I don't know what happened, but she came back to me in Burundi with a letter, and she gave it to me. It was my sister's letter. And she said, Your sister has survived. And I read the letter. In letter, my sister was, I survived. Everybody's gone, but you need to come back to me. So then I was like, this is a very good reason to go back. And that's how I end up going back to my sister in Rwanda.
Thank you to both of you for being with us this evening. And our audience is asking for a link for your book. So we will be sharing that information with you. We will share with you the link for this wonderful memoir. And I want to conclude.
Please come to the conference. It's free.
Yes, we can share that information in the follow-up email as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We also want to ask you something, which is from one of our staff members. Since you are going through such an emotional experience right now, it's emotionally taxing to share this story, to be here with us. Do you have an aftercare process? Do you meditate? Is it prayer? Is it yoga?
Well, I do.
You met Suzanne, so this is Suzanne's question.
Suzanne? Yeah.
I apologize. It's not my question, although I think it's important. Another participant asked this question.
Okay. Yeah, I do.
So,
I
thank
pray.
you for correcting.
My life, I pray a lot. I pray every single day. I pray every moment. My app reminds me when to pray. But also, I love the gym. You find me in a gym every morning doing weights. I don't have a lot of muscles because my arm is so wrong, so I cannot grow any muscle, but I go to the I try to go to the gym every morning and do weights.
Well, and you were active as a student as well, right? You were
Yes,
volleyball and
yeah,
basketball player, so I guess this
yeah.
was something that
Yeah, I love the
never
gym.
stopped.
Yes, it's good, and the friendship. You know, the gathering with the friends and talk, and it's yeah, it's a little, it's somehow emotional after 30 years because to be honest with you, I every single year you think that it's gonna get easier, and you think that it's gonna some miracle gonna happen where you don't have those emotions. So it's sad to see that after 30 years, you still have the same pain you felt when it just happened. And for some of you Holocaust survivors or children of Holocaust survivors, that is exactly probably, yeah, and I don't guess that's how your parents are feeling right now. So that's what makes me cry. We've been waiting for 30 years to take away our pain, but it didn't.
You're dealing with it in an educational way. You're helping us to learn more, and you're helping so many communities. So we're grateful for that.
Oh,
And we keep getting all these questions about your conference and your book. So
yes.
again, do you want to let our audience know the dates for the conference?
So the conference is August 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. It's going to be at the University of Houston. We want survivors of genocide and their children to come. We want our American friends to come. It's not specific, it's not limited to the Rwandese audience. We want the American friends to come and learn from us. We have speakers such as Greg Stanton. I know that a lot of you guys know him. He is the guy who authored the 10 stage of genocide. He's coming. We have Dr. Zachary Kaufman, who is a child of Holocaust survivors. We have Elizabeth, who wrote the book Survivors Cafe, The Legacy of Trauma. She's a child of Holocaust survivors as well. We have speakers from Rwanda, children of survivors from Tutsi survivors, children are gonna be speaking as well. We're gonna have a group session. We're gonna deep into the mental health and trauma and how you can seek for help, kind of educational, but also a gatherness, a pure gatherness reunion for us, a safe space where people can share and cry like I'm doing now, right? Yeah, do whatever I want. So it's gonna be it's very important conference. On Friday, we're gonna show our culture. They're gonna be tradition, music, dance at the hotel. It's a free reception. You experience the culture, the music. Some of the speakers probably one gonna speak, and then Saturday we dive into the conferences and the breakout room, then the session, all of that, and then Sunday is gonna be a commemoration. And this time around, we want the children to be on the top of this commemoration. We wanted to see how they're gonna do it when we're gone. We wanted to handle them the torch. This is your events. Please show us how you want these events to look like. And please, if you are in New York, wherever you are, we invite you to come, and we're gonna treat you as a princess and a kings, and we're gonna take care of you. Just
Henriette, would you please tell us the name of your book once again, please?
It's called, can you show the? It's called By Any Means Necessary, Healing and Forgiveness After Genocide. By Any Means Necessary, Healing and Forgiveness After Genocide. Oh, I can't hear you. I cannot hear you.
Excuse me.
Okay, now I can
we
hear
will conclude with one question which I was planning to ask, and then I was so happy to see that the audience also joined me in asking it, which is, as a survivor and now as an activist and a speaker, a powerful individual, what words of advice, what message do we have for our younger people, our younger audiences who are the future, as you mentioned?
Read books, read and know what is happening in the world. Give a voice, be the voice. Even if you're giving a voice to one person, it's very important. We need to teach our children, our young generation, to speak up, to do what is right, to never be ashamed with nobody when they are standing for what is right. But education is really important.
Thank you, Amen. That was, you know, we are a center for Holocaust, genocide, and human rights education. So you
Exactly
pretty
what you're
much
doing.
paraphrased our mission and vision. But thank you once again so much for joining us this evening, for your courage, for your wisdom, and for your generosity to share your time and your story with us, and all those important messages that you are sending to the world. We are fortunate that you agreed to join us, and grateful for such a wonderful evening spent with us. And allow me to thank you,
for everybody who attended.
I will join Henriette thanking our audience for joining us this evening for the International Day of Reflection on the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. Once again, Rwandan community members who were here with us this evening, survivors near and far, we appreciate you. We stand in solidarity with you. I also would like to thank our staff, Suzanne and Rachel, for helping with the Zoom program, and of course, our donors and members for their generosity and continued support. And until our next meeting virtually or a change in person, thank you, everyone.